1. Back in 2015, I moved into my new house, renovating and landscaping non-stop. Decided to use the driveway, which the previous owner did not use. It was concrete to the property line, but did not extend out to the road. I got all the relevant permissions and approvals and had the driveway extended all the way to the curb. Enter my Karen neighbor, who was parking on the street in front of my house, where the entry to my new driveway now is. I told her about the driveway before I extended it, and she could clearly see it was now a functioning driveway, but continued to park about 6 feet, 2 meters over the entry. I squeezed past the first time and went straight next door and told her that she just needs to move her car forward, as she may have forgotten that the driveway is there now. But Karen did not forget. She did it on purpose, as the first words out of her mouth were, "I've always parked there." I was a little dumbfounded at first, as I hadn't had any problems with her since I moved in a few months earlier. I told her that she can't park there anymore, as it's now a driveway, and I can't use it if she's parked in front of it. She doubled down and said, "Well, I'm not moving. I've always parked in that spot. You should have put your driveway on the other side." I asked her if she was being serious, and she said she was. So I told her if she doesn't move, I would call the police. She said, "Call the police. I know the sergeant, and he will say I can park there." I called the police, and they came and made her move her car immediately. The police were shaking their heads in disbelief when they were talking to her. She started telling them that she's been parking there for many years, and the police told her if she parks there again, they will come back and fine her. So she moved. Fast forward a few weeks, she is now parking right on the edge, about 2 inches, 10 centimeters, from being in the way. Keep in mind, there is plenty of room in front of her own house. I decide not to worry about it because clearly she has serious mental issues, and I honestly can't be bothered at this stage. Well, at this point, the fun started. She would start calling the police for anything and everything I did on my own property, from my lawnmower being too loud to the smell of paint while I was painting my house. She was watching everything I did. The police would turn up the first few times, but eventually stopped coming, as they knew it was sour old Karen with an attitude problem. All because I asked her not to park over my driveway. At one time, she managed to threaten my elderly father when he came to visit, and he parked over my driveway, which is fine because I told him to. It's my driveway. She came outside and confronted my dad about it. She threatened to call the police. My dad gave her a few choice words that I can't repeat, and she went back inside her house. I ended up selling the property a few years later. I often wonder if the new owner is having the same Karen issues. I guess we will never know. 2. For the previous year, I have lived in a small apartment building with 8 people in total living here, and the whole duration, I have had non-stop issues from the Karen beneath. And yesterday was the last straw. Fair warning, this is probably getting long-winded. Issue 1. The last place in which I lived, I have never had any noise issues or complaints. So I will admit I kind of forgot this new place didn't have as thick walls. So I still acted as if no one was watching or listening, and when I played horror video games with my friends, I didn't hold anything back. Although I was never up past 10. She complained about that, and I completely agree that I was in the wrong in being loud. I've kept my singing to my workplace and trying my best to keep noises contained when gaming with friends. Issue 2. During the winter period, I had a new partner, and as you can all imagine, we would get intimate fairly often being a new couple and all. She complained that we were being too loud, too long at all hours of the day. Though I still could kinda understand. I don't think most people would want to listen to that. But at the same time, people are not allowed to enjoy themselves. And I feel like this is kind of a breach of privacy. But anyways, we turned that down a lot too, or interacted mostly outside or at my partner's place until we broke up. Issue 3. Every other week, my mother and my uncle come to visit, to play board games and have a good night with dinner together. We all meet at around 5 and cook together in the kitchen before moving to the living room and playing some things. She now complained that I was slamming drawers, being too loud with my visitors, and scraping chairs against the floor. Now I was starting to get annoyed. Am I not allowed to do anything in my own home? I thought to myself. And I know for a fact that we weren't moving much in the chairs nor slamming drawers in the kitchen. Even so, we bought a carpet for the living room and checked all drawers in the home had little rubber dots on the inside. I also sent a very detailed message to my landlord about how I felt these issues were becoming way too ridiculous. Issue 4, and final one for now. Imagine this, it's 8 p.m. and you're sitting with your computer or laptop or whatever, and you're chatting with people over text. Suddenly you hear 3 loud bangs from below. Thinking nothing of it, you just continue texting. 3 more loud knocks, now you know it's deliberate. Ignore it again. 3 more, give them 2 steps back and hear them shouting something you can't quite make out. Then, next day, landlord contacts you and gives you a warning for being noisy and dragging a suitcase around. I was fuming, I still am. How can someone be seriously bothered a floor below by the typing of a laptop keyboard? I was told that the complaint stemmed from another neighbor, so I went out and gently knocked on my next-door neighbor's door, no one home. Go downstairs and knock on my downstairs neighbor's next-door neighbor and talk. Do the same to the neighbor above me. Both give the 2 same answers when I ask if they feel like I'm noisy and what could I change to make it better. You're not noisy, not as far as I've noticed. And is it her? Without me bringing her up. Today I intend to ask the 3 other neighbors too. The second one I talked to even mentioned she was also the reason the last guy that lived below her moved out. In all my 14 years living here, she is the only one who has called for a meeting of all of us. So I'm intending to talk with the other neighbors. If they do genuinely have a noise complaint, I'll see if I can fix it, even if I feel it's becoming extreme. But if it's not, and they give the same answers, I doubt the basement people can even hear me from my floor. I'm contacting my landlord directly, since they seem to be treating me unfairly based on the 2 neighbors I've already talked with. 3. So this happened a few months ago, and for context, I'm a 29-year-old woman. Had just been in a pretty bad car accident back in April where I had partially wrapped my front end around a tree at 50 miles per hour. Fortunately, I came out mostly intact outside of a broken collarbone and severe muscle strain in my legs. I had gone to the store with a friend, and I had decided that I no longer needed the scooter and wanted to start walking again. She parked as close to the store as she could, but I grossly overestimated the strength I had in my legs, as by the time I got in this store, I was practically using my friend as a crutch, because my legs were trying to give out. Thankfully, there was a bench near the entrance inside where she deposited me. She asked if I was sure I didn't want a scooter. With me being stubborn, I said yes, I was sure. We weren't in a hurry to go anywhere, as we had no other plans, and we were mostly there just to chat with one of the door hosts, as they were a friend of ours. So, the plan was to sit and rest my legs while we chatted, and then go do our shopping. My friend had gotten me a cart to use for when we went shopping, but said she had to go to the bathroom and to wait for her to get back. I was still chatting with our door host friend at the time, so I said okay. Shortly after it started to get busy. I had to stop talking to the door host so they could do their job, so I decided to start scrolling through my phone while I waited for my friend to get back. I was leaning forward with my good arm on the side of the cart, as I did this to let people know I was using it, even though it was empty. And I also want to mention that the cart bay was completely full, and also that you'd have to pass it in order to get to me. Just as I was starting to wonder if my friend had fallen in and was just about to start texting her, a lady came up to my cart while I was leaning on it, started to put her child in the child seat. What do you think you're doing? What? You're not using it. Yes, I am. I'm waiting on my friend in the bathroom. Well, I need it more than you do. Can't you see my baby's tired? I then gestured to the cart bay. There are a bunch of carts that you just passed in order to get to this one. Why didn't you just grab one of those like a normal person? Why can't you just grab one yourself and let me have this one? I don't have time for this. My baby's tired, and you're being rude. Let's see, I'm just sitting here minding my own business while waiting for my friend, and a random lady is trying to get me to let her steal my cart. But I'm the rude one. Somehow I doubt that. Why do kids your age always act so entitled? Didn't your parents teach you to respect your elders? I'm telling you to give me this cart. Now give it. She then tried to move it, but I had my foot on the cart so she couldn't get far. I don't give a damn how old you are, and my parents taught me that respect is earned, not given, so take your kid out of my cart and get lost. You're not entitled to just take whatever you want simply because you're older. Go get your own cart. It was at this point I had stood up to yank my cart back, but that proved to be a mistake, as I almost fell into the cart due to my weak legs. Instinct told me to use both my arms to catch myself on the cart, but that was also a bad idea due to my broken collarbone. All this to say, I made a very bad decision, and the amount of pain I was in afterwards was vocal after I landed on the floor. My door host friend heard me yelp and came over to ask what happened. The lady told them that she was just walking by when I had stopped her and tried to steal her cart. The door host looked at her, then at me, then back to her. I watched her friend give that cart to her when they came in. She should be back any second now. But I have a kid. This idiot, pointing at me, is just faking whatever it is she has for attention. Make her get another one. And off she went. No fanfare, no police called, no justice. Just me sitting on the floor trying not to cry from the amount of pain I was in. My door host friend helped me back up and onto the bench and got me another cart just as my friend came back. When I told her what happened, she was angry, but ultimately agreed there wasn't anything we could do, as the lady was long gone by then. I ended up needing that scooter after all. I was reminded of this story as said friend and I were talking about entitled people on Reddit, and she told me to post this. To anyone who's wondering, I'm doing much better other than some slight stiffness in my shoulder. My legs are completely healed now. 4. So my husband and I got saved last summer by some people from an evangelist church. There's only a small percentage that are nice and don't take advantage of us. We have a landlord who goes to the church, who has overcharged us rent, has made us live in an unlivable apartment, and wants us to now put the electricity bill in our name. We already pay $300 more a month than other people in updated units, and he makes us pay in cash and other sketchy activities that go on. There's this other guy that constantly asks for money after we blessed him with $300 when we were broke ourselves. But he believes that my husband makes good money, which he doesn't because my husband works with somebody else from the church and only makes $20 an hour for skilled labor, which is what my husband made over 20 years ago doing the same job. His checks are always short a few hours too, and he always has to complain to get them. Anyway, what really annoys me is the last time when my husband is trying to get his license back, he needed a ride somewhere that would have cost a $100 round trip with an Uber. Instead, he wanted to reach out to somebody he knew was on SSI, got himself there for being too fat, has no shame or decency, this guy is totally socially inept, is always coming to my work looking for free stuff. He actually calls to see if I'm there first. And my co-workers thought he was a stalker, and he and his wife come up to my waitress job to get free food, which I can't give them. Anyway, so my husband gave him $150, which was $50 more than it would have cost to get an Uber. First of all, this guy wanted most of it in advance for oil change, but really because he's a food addict, which I told my husband not to do because it would end up being gone when the time came to give him the ride, which it was. And my husband had made himself a mark, and will go behind my back and give this guy more money. So, I turned the debit card off that he had, and told him to tell this person to stop by the house and I'll give him the last $30. Of course, this person complained that wasn't enough gas money, when he had 2 weeks to prepare for this day, knowing he had already had most of it in advance. However, the appointment was cancelled, not due to my husband, but the place cancelled it, and this guy would not give the money back and said if my husband wanted him to drive again, it would cost him more money. So this guy does have a job, and he does collect SSI, so he should plan it for a day that he has the money from his check or his job, but instead just says in the future he's not going to have the money. I'm sorry, but these people are total pieces of crap, but we can't say anything because we're new in the church. We're former drug addicts, and nobody believes anything we say. But this guy is totally draining my husband with just being an emotional drain and also with money. And I'm getting sick of him and his wife coming to my work looking for handouts. I'm sorry for my rant. But I just need some advice, because I can't get my husband to say no to people like this, people at his job, our landlord, people everywhere in this damn church. He overcompensates, and then he gets angry that the bank account is low. I'd like to just cut this guy off that offered my husband the ride, but now he owes my husband $150, and I just don't think that's right. These people are long-time high-up members of the church. Hellfreezer's note. There is always another church. There are no shortage of churches in the United States. Find another one. Cut these people off, even if it means no longer going to that particular church. You'll find another one that meets your needs. Your husband sounds like a very nice, kind, and generous guy. He needs to learn to be a bit more cruel is what needs to happen there. I've been there. I've been kind to people to my own detriment. And it's a lesson you don't need to learn twice once you learn it. You'll get there eventually, but I hope it's sooner rather than later for both your sake. 5. My wife and I saved up for 3 years in order to take a dream vacation. Back in 1996, my wife's family emigrated to the States from Thailand. She was born in one of the southern New Jersey townships, and never really got a chance to experience the place of her mother's and father's birth. Though they always spoke highly of the place, they didn't mince words when it came to the reasoning for their immigration. It was mostly due to police corruption and poverty. Back then, even on minimum wage, they were able to afford an apartment big enough for the 3 of them while raising an infant daughter, and only one of them worked. I've known my wife since middle school. We had the same English and history classes together. She was heavily bullied due to her accent, and I was raised by a single dad who didn't play those kind of games. I stood up for her. I kept standing up for her, and eventually she stood up for herself and the bullying mostly stopped. So what didn't stop was a burgeoning friendship that left us inseparable, and eventually culminated in what was quite possibly the best decision of my life. We were at dinner with the in-laws one night when she started asking questions about the home country once again. Eventually her mother spoke up and asked why she seemed so interested. She let them know we were planning on visiting so she could see the sights firsthand. As we expected, her parents were excited for us but showed a tinge of concern. The rest of the dinner conversation consisted of the ins and outs of being a tourist in Thailand, being wary of pickpockets and organized crime if we were to visit the city, wildlife to pay attention to if we were to visit the more rural areas, and they left no stone unturned. They mentioned everything from wild boars to venomous snakes and spiders. Yes, my wife is a full-grown adult, but they are still her parents, and they are lovely people who are always looking out for her best interests as well as mine. We thank them for their advice, and the next thing we know, we're booking a flight. The flight was kind of long, and we're so glad that touchdown finally happened. We found a fairly decent hotel not too far away from the airport, and after we got a good rest in, we decided to take in some of the scenery. Thankfully, my wife speaks pretty good Thai because her parents did their best to raise her bilingual. So that morning, she is speaking to the concierge in the hotel, and she's asking him about places worth visiting and the easiest methods of travel. She explained she was born in America, but her parents lived here and did their best to keep her connected to her roots. This nice gentleman sat down with us at the lobby and did his best to speak both Thai and English, so we had an idea as to where he was going with this. Thankfully, he ended up giving us some pretty good recommendations. We found ourselves mostly traveling by bus. Even he warned us about the pickpockets and told me that it was good that I was dressed modestly. Grey cargo pants, 10-eyelet work boots tucked into the pant legs, and a cream-colored button-up shirt. Nothing that would draw attention to me other than the obvious difference in ethnicity. We never actually encountered any issues with those with a mastery of sleight of hand. When we did stop off at street vendors to get a bite to eat, we usually paid no attention to who was going where, and often followed the bus drivers when they were stopping to get a bite themselves. I found myself eating all sorts of exotic fruit and truly enjoying the experience. Eventually, we made our way to an area called Phuket. It didn't take me long to realize that one of the things her parents had warned me about roamed the streets freely. Hundreds of macaque monkeys made their way throughout the crowd or rested on rooftops and other structures. Getting a better look at street level, I can see monkeys that had apparently built up a certain level of trust with some of the street vendors, sitting mere inches away from the person selling wares on a blanket, engaging in preening sessions with one another. I honestly thought it a breathtaking sight, albeit a bit cute. For a wild animal of any kind to build up that much trust in a human being is rare, and I was seeing it in at least 8 different locations at once. I pull out my disposable camera, yes, they're still available in some rare locations, and I snap a few pictures. As I'm gleefully talking to my wife about what we're seeing, we hear it.
I can't understand what you're saying. Speak English.
My wife and I turned our attention to a heavy-set American man. He has a thick southern drawl, and if I had to guess, I would say Kentucky or Louisiana. He's pasty, unkempt beard, sweating like Marilyn Manson at a Baptist revival. Khaki-colored bucket hat aviator shades, bright blue Hawaiian shirt, and a pair of black cargo pants. All of this stereotypical tourist look is capped off by calf-length sports socks with brown leather sandals. He's wearing an expensive-looking camera around his neck, and I'm guessing he's trying to do the same thing and take pictures of his surroundings, just with more expensive equipment that would definitely make him a target for thieves. There's an older Thai gentleman wearing a loose-fitting dark red shirt, grey pants, and a pair of black flip-flop-styled sandals. He's got his hand in the man's face, the back of it towards him, and he's saying something over and over again, obviously distressed and in his native tongue. I can tell the tourist is getting frustrated, and he keeps screaming English over and over again to this man. I finally ask my wife if she's getting this, and she just nods. I'm not getting everything, but from what I can make out, he's saying the monkeys are not friendly, stop taunting the monkeys, and he's asking the guy if he wants to lose a finger like him. I'm pretty sure I made a meme-worthy face when she translated a good portion of that interaction before saying, "Oh, maybe we should hang back a bit and let this blow over." She agrees with me, and we look around. We see what appears to be an open-air restaurant under an awning. We make our way over there and order a couple of cold drinks before sitting down at a table. Mind you, the whole time we're doing this old man is still screaming at the tourist. What the old man is saying suddenly shifts when we go to take our first sips. I look up to see the man with his back turned to the local who is clearly warning him. The old man had finally had enough. He's shaking his fists at his side and stomping the ground. He turns back to the tourist and starts wagging his nubbed finger at him while yelling just before shaking his head and walking away. The tourist reaches into his pocket and pulls out what appears to be either a prune or a date before handing it to the monkey. He takes a few steps back. I can see the monkey's expression, and I can tell that it's raising its eyebrows and clicking its teeth. I looked into this particular behavior after coming home, and I found out this macaque was expressing happiness. At least for the moment. This man made possibly the dumbest move he could by turning his back on a wild animal after snapping a couple of pictures and letting it finish its impromptu treat. I'd say this roughly 35 to 40-pound animal is sitting there for a moment and looking at its paws. It realizes it doesn't have another treat coming its way, and it gets angry. A low growl, followed by what I can only describe as a primate hoot, starts bellowing from its mouth. Some of the other monkeys take notice, and the ones that don't immediately run to its side start doing the same thing from the street level and the rooftops. Before I know what, I find myself screaming, "Hey, buddy, you may want to get out of there," to this idiot. What does he do? He shoots me a dirty look and calls me a jack-off, utilizing 1980s film antagonist ASL. And that's when Lady Karma allows the monkey crap to hit the fan. Quite literally. A storm of stinky brown starts raining from the rooftops, as this man is pelted with digested monkey matter. He's standing there, shocked for a moment, as he realizes what's going on, but before he can run away, the monkey he'd given the piece of fruit to jumps up on the wall behind him and grabs the strap to his camera. As he goes to finally make a move and run for it, it yanks the strap and pulls the camera square into his face violently. The impact is enough to knock him to the ground dazed for a second, and this opening is when the monkeys swarm him. He's getting bitten and scratched, and this is going on for less than 10 seconds, but believe me, as I'm witnessing it, it feels like an hour. I came to see beautiful structures and experience a culture I'd never thought I would, and now I'm watching a man get mauled by macaques. Finally, one of the locals ends up standing about 10 feet away with a garden hose. They begin to spray the monkeys down, and this is enough to make them disperse long enough for this man to make a getaway. He ends up sitting a couple of tables away from us, and I get a good look at the damage. His face is covered in scratches, the pocket of his shirt is ripped off, exposing his chest, and he's got a nasty-looking bite around his nipple. The guy, bleeding all over the place, and when he opens his mouth to speak, I can see the camera has knocked out a couple of his front teeth on the bottom row of his jaw. He realizes his camera is missing, and suddenly that takes priority over the fact that he is covered in wounds. We look up to see this monkey sitting on a rooftop, with his camera, smashing it against the stone shingles, as it begins breaking apart little by little. As the man stands up from his seat and starts cursing at these animals, with the foghorn leghorn drawl, my wife points out the man in the red shirt again. He comes walking up to the restaurant with a bottle of what I can only assume to be rice wine and a rag. He pours the alcohol over this piece of cloth while he is walking up to this man, and without warning, puts the soaked rag onto the man's heavily bleeding nipple. This is when the tourist gets his wish, and the man begins to speak broken English.
Hold rag there, I call ambulance. You need to go hospital. Monkeys have disease. Monkeys have hepatitis. You need to see doctor.
The man, still bleeding and mind you, still covered in fecal matter, collapses into his chair. He goes silent and 3 shades lighter than he already was.
I tried tell him. He no listen.
He holds up his hand and shows what is 3/4 of an index finger to us.
Monkey bite me when I was a kid. I make fun. He took my finger.
He looks at the man and shakes his head before calling him the Thai equivalent of a dumbass, before walking away whilst muttering something. It takes every fiber of my being not to break out in laughter when I realize he's walking away from the guy quietly repeating, "Speak English," before he looks at me and rolls his eyes as if to say, "Can you believe this idiot?" I make a sort of apologetic face to this man, as if to reassure him that not all tourists are this dense. Eventually an ambulance shows up and loads a Kentucky Fried Stupid into the back. My wife and I continued, despite that particular incident, what is quite possibly the best vacation we've ever had. We're going back again next summer and bringing our in-laws this time around. Coincidentally, I thanked them for the advice. When we told them about the guy in the Hawaiian shirt, my father-in-law just shook his head before speaking up and saying to me, "Oh yeah, I know Phuket well. Used to go to Monkey Hill all the time. I would see that 8, maybe 9 times every year. The locals get it. Leave the monkeys alone. Tourists, not so much. Thank you for listening to our advice. That's why we love you. You're smart enough to listen." So, if you ever find yourself in Thailand and you think that monkey is cute, keep in mind it's really a furry little powder keg with 4-inch-long canine teeth primed to go off without warning. So, unless you really want to become a statistic and the subject of somebody else's story, it really is best to just let them do their thing. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 175. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please like and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel, there's a few ways you can do that. I've recently activated members. There should be a members button somewhere under the video, maybe? I don't know how it works. I think it's under the video. And you can also support me on my Patreon page, which is linked for you in the description, as well as perhaps buy some Hellfreezer merchandise that is also linked for you in the description, and also the Hellfreezer Discord server, which is not a way to support the channel, it's just there if you want to use it. You can also leave a tip by clicking on the heart underneath the video player, but none of that is ever required, but I do really appreciate it if you choose to go that route. Okay. No other bits and bobs, so let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... Okay, this one comes from Fuzzy McBear. I love that name, via the Discord. If there was a parallel world where everything else was the same except for Hellfreezer's name, what would his name be? My pick would be Heaven Toaster. I suggested Celestial Heater because, as we all know, that is my evil twin. But I'm open to other suggestions. Have fun with it. I look forward to reading your comments below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this answer comes from Idiots in the Wild 174, and the question was, how often do you need to replace like your ear pads, that sort of things, instead of replacing the whole, device, the headphones. And today's answer comes from Enza Sierra. I have had some AKG 553 Pro headphones that I got almost 10 years ago, and in all that time I have replaced the pads twice, modified it to have an audio port on the headphones, and most recently I am replacing a dead 50mm audio driver. These headphones will live forever. I respect that, Enza. With the Bose headphones that I use, I've had, like I say, I have to replace the pads once a year, whether it's like the proper ones or the aftermarket ones. There's really no difference in how long they last. And I did replace one of the drivers. It was a 40mm driver, I think the Bose ones have. I've had to replace that once. I thought I'd have to do both so that the sound would be balanced, but I guess I just got really lucky in sourcing them because the quality of the one I replaced was the same as the other one. So I now have a spare one if it breaks again in the future, so I can repair them again. Apart from that, I have my Sennheiser headphones, which I don't actually like that much. Honestly, it's fair enough if you like them, I just haven't had a good experience with them personally. These Sennheisers were a replacement for a pair that was broken, and it was really cool. They're really good in replacing it. They couldn't repair it, but they decided, okay, we're just going to send you an upgrade to the next model, so I went from the 2.0 to the 3.0. And they're fine, they work, I just can't use the noise cancelling on full because it sounds broken. It sounds like a very much in one ear. If I put it on like the middle setting, it's not so bad and it's actually usable at that point. But I only use them as a backup for when the charge runs out of my Bose ones and I forgot to charge them. Although I will say this, the ear pads on the Sennheiser, very washable. I can actually take them off and give them a good scrub because I had to do that recently. And with that, and thank you very much for your answer, Enza. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening. And take very good care of yourself.